This is almost the end of the Python programming part of this course. Congratulations if you've already made it that far. After this and the next activity, you will be ready to create your own programs for GPIOs, camera, web servers, etc. So in this lesson, I'm going to introduce you to Python lists. First of all, why do we need lists? Well, for now you have worked with one value at a time. What if you need to process 10 different values? Let's say make a computation on 10 different temperatures that you have measured. And what if it's not 10, but 10,000 values? This can look like a nightmare, but don't worry, you won't have to create 10,000 variables to manipulate 10,000 values. You can put all of those inside one container, only one container, which is called a list. You may also have heard of arrays. Well, a list is simply the Python way of saying an array. So what is a list? A list is a collection of variables. It is very useful when you need to store multiple variables which are related. So let's create a simple list here. I'm going to name it number list. Okay, so again, when you create a variable, when you create a name, when you create a function name, anything, make sure to give a meaningful name. So when you create a list of numbers, well, simply name it number list, or you could also name it numbers with an S, okay, or number array, okay. I'm going to use number list with an underscore, and you are going to use brackets, and inside those brackets you are going to put all of the different values. So here I'm going to create a list with integer numbers. Let's say 3, 5, 6, -8, and 156. So you add brackets, and between those brackets you put all of the elements of that list separated by a comma. And then if you want to print this list, it's very simple. You do print and number list. And let's run the script. I'm going to save it as lists.python. Okay. And you can see that we have the array here. Very easy. Now let's see what we can actually do with that list here. So first of all, instead of just printing the whole list, we may want to be able to access only one of the elements. So to access one of the elements, you are going to write the name of the list and then use bracket. And inside the brackets, you are going to give the index of the element. So let's try with index 1 and see what it does. And index 1 will give us the value 5. The value 5 is here the second value in the array. So that is something that is very quite common in programming, is that we don't start to count at 1. Instead, we start to count at 0. So if we look at this list here, we have the index 0 here, index 1, index 2, 3, and 4. Okay, see, so if I want to get first value, I will get 3, so I need to do number list brackets 0. And so here I'm printing it, but I could just, let's say, number is equal to number list 0. So I can put that inside a variable. So then we can put 1, we can put 2, okay, to get 6, we can put 3, okay, we can put 4, and let's try with 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What happens if we put 5? We get an error, and this error is quite explicit. So the error is from line 2, okay, this line. Index error, list index out of range, okay, because the list, the max index is 4. We try to access the index number 5, which doesn't exist, and that is why you have this error. So that is something you should pay attention to, is try not to access a index which is not available, okay, for this particular list. Great, so now you have seen how to access a certain element in the array. Now let's see how you can modify one element. And it's actually very easy to modify one element. Let's do it here. You can simply do number list with bracket again. Let's say I want to modify the this element, so index 0, 1, 2. I'm going to put 2 here. I'm simply going to assign a new value like this. So on the left, the list name with bracket and the index, then equal sign, and on the right, the new value. So let's actually do that, and then I'm going to print the number list again. Let's remove that print here and run the script. And of course, yeah, we need to make this work, okay? Because if you have an error, of course, the rest of the program won't be executed. So now it's working, and as you can see now, the list here we have 3, 5, and 3. Okay, the third value here is not 6 anymore. The third value is 3 because we have modified it with that line. And the same rule applies for the index. Let's say I want to modify with index 5. I will also get this same error because I'm trying to access a value which is not in the list. So let's put 4, and as you can see now, we have modified the index 4 in the list. And there is one nice function you can use, because for now the array here, or the list, contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different values. But in fact, lists in Python are dynamic. So you can add or you can remove any element you want to make the list grow or reduce in size, okay? It's not like some other languages, like for example C and C++. When you create a basic array, the size is fixed and you can't modify it. Here, if you want, you can add a new value after that, and you simply need to do number list. So you're going to use the array dot append. So you're going to use the append function on the list, and you're going to add a new value, let's say 34. So I'm adding a new value, and then I print the list. Let's see what it does. And as you can see, we have a new value here. So we have modified the index number 4. Okay, it's not that number, it's that number now. And we have added a new value. So now this will have the index number 5. So if I try to access the number list with index 5, it will work after I have added this new number. Great, so now you can create lists. You can access any element on the list using the index. You can also modify an element on the list, and you can add new elements to the list. And actually now what I'm going to do is to show you how you can use lists with loops. So you have just learned loops in the previous lesson. Now we are going to combine the two together, and you will see that it's quite powerful. So basically the problem now is how can we actually get access to each element. Okay, let's say I want to modify each element, like I want to double each element in the array. What I can do is repeat that, okay, that line of code for every element. Okay, but as you can see, that is always the same thing. We have to do number list 0 is equal to something, number list 1 is equal to something, etc. And we don't want to repeat the code again and again. So what we are going to do is use a for loop for the number list. And if you remember the for loop from the last lesson, we are going to make it slightly different. So let's say from number in number list, let's say print number. Okay, what will happen here? As you can see, we are printing all of the different numbers from the list one by one. So here with lists, you can use the for loop to get access to every element one by one. So how does it work? You have the for and you have the in. After the in, you have to put the name of the list. So this is number list. You put the name here. And then here, just after the for, you are going to create a new variable. Okay, so you can see we have the number variable here, and we also have the number variable here. But this will be a new local variable inside the for loop, okay? And for every element in the list here, we will execute, so the for loop will execute that block of code using each element, and it will put the element value inside the number variable right here. So in this example, we will start with, so the number will first take the value 3, okay? So we execute that block of code with the number 3. And then we come back to line 6. Now the number will be 5, etc. We come back to line 6, the number will be 6, and then the number will be -8, 156. And because we have added another value, we also have the 34 at the end. And once we have used all of the elements in the list, then the for loop will end and the program will resume at line 8 right here, and we can continue with all of the following instructions. So now let's say I actually want to create a new list and take the values from the number list but double the value each time. So I'm going to create new list here, and I can initialize the list just like that. So you can actually create an empty list, okay? There is no problem with that. You can create an empty list with 0 element. So what I'm going to do, I'm going through all of the element in the number list so that we stay the same. And now what I'm doing is new list dot append, and I'm going to add a new element. Okay, for each element in the number list, I'm going to add a new element in the new list. So that will be number times 2. Okay, now what I can do is I can go to a new line and remove the indentation and now print the new list. And let's see how it runs. And you can see that now the new list contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values. Okay, so the 5 here plus that one. Okay, and each value is actually the double of the value in the number list. So with just 2 lines of code, as you can see, we have created an entire new list which takes number from another list and modify the number. All right, let's make a very quick recap. A list in Python will allow you to store a collection of values inside only one container. You can put as many values as you want in a list. To create a list, you first need to give it a meaningful name, then use the equal sign and initialize values inside brackets, each value being separated by a comma. You can also use the append function to add a new element to an existing list. When you access an element of a list, make sure you use the correct index and don't go out of the range. Finally, going through lists using a for loop is something very common that you will use quite often in your programs.